there's a person sawing in the forest, and he's working hard and he's sweating, and then somebody comes in and says, how long have you been trying to cut down that tree? And he just said, yeah, for 7 hours. And he said, well, why don't you sharpen the saw? And he says, because I'm too busy sawing. That is part 2 of the 7 habits of highly effective people. This is the interdependent habits, habit 4, 5, and 6. So habit number 4 is think win-win. You can't operate on an interdependent level until you're independent personally. Dependent people cannot be interdependent because you're dependent on somebody else's weaknesses. You're dependent on somebody else. You can't consistently at a high level operate from an interdependent level. And so habit 4, 5, and 6 has to come off that base of somebody that, is proactive, that begins with the end in mind, that puts first things first, and has this foundation of independence. But when you get there, those first 3 habits are the personal habits, personal productivity. The second 3 habits are getting along and thriving and being effective with people. And this first habit is this philosophy of think win-win. And I think something that's important is it's a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit for all human interactions. And so think win-win is a philosophy. Think win-win is how you show up every day in every interaction. Win-win is a paradigm of abundance. When you think about scarcity and you think about abundance, this idea of win-lose, that I get something and I win and you lose, or you win and I lose. That's a paradigm of scarcity, that there's not enough, that there's only one winner. And there's a lot of scenarios where that's the case. When you go into sports, there's going to be a winner, there's going to be a loser. But in human interactions, this idea of mutual benefit, we're going to stay at the table and we're going to go find a solution that's the best thing for you or the best thing for me, or we'll agree to disagree and just not do the deal. And I think this philosophy has completely shaped me. I have a friend, a dear friend named Andy Dent. He's somebody that I look up to at the highest level. He's successful with his family, he's successful in business. And I got this call from Andy. And it was the nicest compliment that anybody ever could have given me. He said, hey, I did what you would do. I said, what are you describing? He said, Andy's into horses. And he had a horse trainer that they had bought a horse together, and the horse didn't work out. And he had spent some money for the horse, and the outcome wasn't as good as they thought it was. And the horse trainer got paid regardless. He got paid to, go broker the horse and sell the horse. And so there was this feeling of, hey, I didn't, benefit, you should also go take a haircut and, not benefit also. And then he said he had thought of what would Casey do, which again was like the greatest compliment one of my favorite compliments I've ever been given. But instead of going in with that mentality, he said, hey, we've had a lot of these experiences together. A lot of them been big winners, and some of them haven't worked out so well, but I want you to go take your full commission. Thank you for being such an amazing friend, and look forward to doing a lot of things in the future. And he said that interaction, it made him feel so good, and it absolutely lit up his friend that he worked with. And for him, it was a big win because they are going to do a lot of deals together in the future. And those dollars meant less to Andy than they did to his partner. And so he put his partner's interests first and felt phenomenal, felt abundant. And I know it'll come back to him, in a big way, however that works out. So that's an example of this paradigm of abundance and this paradigm of thinking win-win. Win-win is not a technique. It is a total philosophy of human interaction. And so I think, if I could summarize it in a couple of words, it would be you showing up in every interaction with every person with the sole intent to make sure that anything that you ever do, that it's the best for both parties, that you optimize the outcome, that you just work as hard as you can humanly work to make sure that all the parties have the best outcome possible. And by doing that, you become kind of a problem solver. You become a person that, can get into the mix and can actually help work things out. You become a peacemaker because you have that level head and that abundant mindset and that abundant energy that, when you're abundant, you lead out with abundance. It encourages everybody else to step up and to do the same thing. So that's habit number 4, the habit of win-win. Habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then speak to be understood. So many times in life, we listen with the intent to reply. And most people, when they're listening, their whole premise is to figure out what they're going to say instead of truly listening to understand and to empathize. And when you understand somebody personally, emotionally, when you capture all of them, it's as if you gave them emotional air. It's as if they can breathe, and it allows them to go deeper and to open up. And listening, like true listening, true empathetic listening, breeds trust. That if you do those things, that you will just develop so much more trust with the people that you work with, because by showing empathy and by listening with the intent to understand, people feel your sincerity. They don't feel like you're talking over them. They feel like you truly care about what they have to say. And by restating what they have to say and not finishing until they feel fully understood, it allows you to have tremendous influence when you actually do communicate. This idea of diagnose first, prescribe second. You think about this idea of going to the doctor, and they, give this example of you go in and you're having trouble seeing, and you go into the eye doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had eye problems forever. Take my glasses." And he puts his glasses on, and you can see worse than before. And then you say, "Hey, these aren't working for me." And the doctor gets frustrated and says, "What are you, ungrateful? They've worked for me for 30 years. You just got to try harder." And this idea at a doctor's office, it's kind of funny to think about, but we do that all the time in personal interactions. We project our own autobiography, the experiences that we've had our entire life. We give advice way too fast. And then people just discount the advice. We either steamroll over them and they just think this person doesn't care, or they, don't have the heart to go argue or keep going. And so they just feel misunderstood. And you really have very little influence when you're speaking out of your kind of autobiography. Empathetic listening is so powerful because it gives you accurate data. And with that accurate data, you can go give like an accurate diagnosis. And so by listening, by seeking first to understand, then speaking to understood, speaking to be understood, it's the sequence that allows you to be truly effective with people. Anybody who knows my wife, Chelsea, she is a phenomenal listener. And she has so many friends because she's a phenomenal listener. And people just are drawn to people that can empathize with them and that can listen and that truly understand them. I think all of us, it truly is like emotional air. And when you find those great friends, those people that just truly listen at a high level, they are worth their weight in gold in your organization, in your family. And if you want to have a lot of friends, I think about this book from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And just listening will get you a tremendous amount of friends, because there's not that many people who truly do it. And so much of it comes out of this desire to have a win-win mentality. And then a lot of it's just caring and consideration. These great service-based companies, they're phenomenal listeners. They are acutely aware and just seeking any detail that you can go give them that will give them an insight on how they can serve you better. And I've found in my life, when I practice this skill and when I execute on this skill of listening and listening with empathy and listening with the intent to understand, that I'm much more effective as a dad, as a husband, in business than I am when I get casual and when I respond out of either my autobiography or just with the intent to reply. So habit number 6 is it's the habit of valuing the differences. It's synergy or synergizing. And habit number 6 isn't something you do. It's something you get from effectively practicing habit number 4 and number 5. So habit number 4 and number 5, think win-win. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then speak to be understood. If you do those 2 things really well, what you will get is synergy. And synergy is better than your way or my way. Synergy is our way. It's a better way. It's a third alternative that ultimately ends up taking the best of all the different feedback and coming up with a solution that's better than any one individual could have came up with alone. You think about in nature, this principle of synergy and how plants, their roots go into the ground and then they intermingle. And when the storms come and when the wind comes, they have this strength because they synergize, they intermingle, they intertwine, and all the plants are way stronger together than they would be independent on their own. The other example of this is the example of, a man and a woman coming together and having a baby. It's 2 people with very distinct differences that come together, and in that process, you come up with something that each individual couldn't come up with on their own. And that process of 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or 5. My family, we've got 5 kids, and this is a product of synergy. This isn't 1 + 1 = 2. This is 1 + 1 is 7 in our case, and so we see it all the time in the physical world. Another place that you experience synergy is on great teams in business and in sports. I remember I was a sophomore in high school and played for a team that had tremendous talent, but was so uniquely different from the seniors to the sophomores, from the kids that, did drugs and partied to the religious kids. There was just like this motley crew of individuals that for a lot of the season, we didn't fully come together. We never played our best baseball. And then there was just this one thing that happened where it wasn't about the individual. It was about the team. And we went on this heater that you had to be there and live it to experience the magic. And we literally, I think we won 6 or 7 games through this tournament. We ended up, we had lost a game earlier in the tournament. And we end up winning 5 or 6 games straight and end up winning the state championship. And I still remember rushing the field, and it was this magical experience, but it was with this group that there was this moment in time where the strengths of every individual, like the whole was so much greater than the sum of the parts, that any individual was fine, but us coming together and playing as a team and sacrificing for each other and caring for each other, we were just unstoppable in those 6 or 7 games. It was so special. Another one of these experiences that I had, I remember taking a team of salespeople out to Austin, Texas. And again, there was extreme differences from the different kind of parts of my group. There was kids that were, grown up and were married and had kids. And there was others that were, 18, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, all different religious backgrounds, different race, different ethnicity. And as we started the season, that the team hadn't fully come together. But as we went and put in that work of just serving each other, building culture, sacrificing for each other, sweating next to each other, everybody going and pulling their weight. There was, these times during that year where we were just untouchable, where everybody performed so much better than their average, that they were disproportionately outside of their normal range of production. It's because they were doing it for their teammates. And I still remember anybody who was a part of that experience, they could reflect and they could say that was a magical experience. That was a beautiful experience. And those to me were like personal examples that I've had with synergy. I've had them with my family. I've had them with, great business partners. Baugh Gardner was my business partner for a lot of years. We couldn't be more different on different personality traits or tendencies. We just, when I see red and he sees blue on almost everything, but we had shared values and we had just a really beautiful business partnership for a lot of years. And it wasn't the sameness that made it amazing. It was the differences. We were different and we valued the differences and we had that mutual respect. We were able to go create some really beautiful things in our business because of those extreme differences, not because of the sameness, but because of the differences. Habit number 7, and this is the final habit. This is the habit of sharpening the saw. I did an entire podcast on this of weekly planning, but the idea is that there's a person sawing in the forest, and he's working hard and he's sweating, and then somebody comes in and says, how long have you been trying to cut down that tree? And he just said, yeah, for 7 hours. And he said, well, why don't you sharpen the saw? And he says, because I'm too busy sawing. And that idea that I don't have the time to fill up gas for the car because I'm too busy driving, or I don't have the time to take care of my body because I'm too busy working, or I don't have the time to invest in my marriage because I'm too busy, doing something else professionally. There's this principle that if you can sharpen the saw, if you can, this idea of the Sabbath day, this idea of this day of rest, that, this ancient tradition that one day a week we rest, 6 days we work, and 1 day we rest. And I think that ratio is the right ratio. I think if you're resting for 6 days and working for 1 day, it's probably the wrong ratio. But working hard for 6 days and grinding, but then having a day where you step back and you reflect and you review and you look at kind of the previous week and your activities and your results, and you analyze, am I on the right track? Is my ladder against the right wall? Am I in the right jungle? And as you analyze this, you can recommit to go prioritize or schedule your priorities. And this habit of sharpening the saw, whether it's with your body, whether it's with your mind, whether it's in your business, having these offsites will fundamentally and has fundamentally changed my life. Let me give you some examples of sharpening the saw and how it's affected my life. And it's going off of Stephen Covey's paradigm of the whole person paradigm. So mentally, when I was a young guy, I got influenced to read a book a week and got on this kick and have done it, for the most part over the last 20 years, either reading or listening to an audiobook a week. And this process of continuous improvement, constant never-ending improvement, or Kaizen, has fundamentally shaped the way that I see the world, my vocabulary and my business acumen and my leadership acumen and my mental acuity, and just that mental or emotional muscle has been strengthened by putting in that work every day, by sharpening the saw. The second one is social emotional. The friends and the people and how to actually go manage my emotions on a daily basis. I'll wake up and I'll sit in the sauna and I'll sit in the cold plunge and I'll work out and I'll meditate. And when I can get these habits and get in these rituals, it allows me to go reset and then recommit. This idea of like getting proper sleep is part of sharpening the saw. It's saying, I need to go fill up the gas to go get the car where I need to go. And sleep is kind of one of those habits or rituals. Physically, this idea of like working out every day and eating right, just putting in these daily private victories, this miracle morning, or these habits or rituals that go drive success. But these are quadrant 2, not urgent, but important habits. But these things come about by having this philosophy that I am going to sharpen the saw, that I'm going to recommit to do those quadrant 2 things on a consistent basis that give me the production capacity, that optimize my production capacity. And then spiritually, I think about my habits and rituals over the last 20 years. And me and my wife, on Sunday, we go to church. And in the morning, we pray. And at night, we pray. And, once a month, we'll go to the temple. We'll go to, our sacred building, and we'll go worship together. And we've done this for 20 years. And I think about these habits or rituals of like going back and having a habit or a ritual of reconnecting with God. This habit of tithe, or to give a tenth of all you earn to the Lord, and this idea of charity and giving back. Ultimately, over time, these are the habits and rituals that shape you. And if you want an exceptional relationship with your Creator, if you want an exceptional relationship with your spouse, if you want a physical body that you feel good and you're proud and you're in good shape, if you want to be wise, if you want to have great interpersonal relationships, this habit of sharpening the saw is essential. It's central to those things. This is the habit that makes all of the other hours in the week better. And so I'd invite you guys to go listen to my podcast on weekly planning. This is something that I'm super passionate about. I've done it for a lot of years. And the reason I'm passionate about it is because it's been life-changing for me, and it drives such a high level of quality of life that I try to share it whenever I get the chance. So this is my summary of the 7 habits of highly effective people. It'll be the longest summary that I ever give on any book. But the reason we kind of took the proper time to go delve in is it really is trying to give honor to, a book and an author that fundamentally kind of changed the course of my life. And there's, millions and even tens of millions of people at this point that could say the exact same thing, that, Stephen Covey going and putting in the work to go organize these truths and these principles and present them in a way that you can remember them, that are simple, that are sequential, has just had kind of an incalculable amount of good in the world, and that fires me up. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and hopefully you can go read and apply these habits and become more effective in your both personal and interpersonal lives. Thanks, guys.